My stepdad Roland cornered me in our Austin music shop storeroom, his voice low, eyes too intense. I was drunk, taunting him, craving his edge. His fingers brushed mine, charged, forbidden. I pushed harder, fearless. The betrayal I uncovered with his lover? It's brutal. What I did to destroy them? You'll be floored. I rolled into the storeroom of our Austin music shop just after midnight, the bar's cheap tequila still buzzing in my head, 6th Street's neon lights fading behind me, when I saw my stepdad Roland, a 57-year-old shop owner who'd once rocked stages, sorting a stack of vinyl records under a dim bulb, his gray hair messy, his flannel open, giving off that rock and roll vibe I'd been wanting to mess with for weeks. Mom, Kate, was at her pottery class, her landscape design papers all over our dining room, and I knew she'd flip if she caught me out late, like when she'd nagged me about skipping dinner last month, so I stepped quiet, but I wanted Roland's attention. Had for a while, and the tequila made it easy to start something. I kicked off my boots, saying his records looked too dusty for a Friday night, my voice low, with a smirk, trying to grab his focus without making a scene, hoping he'd bite. Roland looked up, his eyes sharp despite the late hour, saying I'd crashed his work without a heads up, his tone dry, a bit snarky, but he didn't look away, like he noticed my wobble and wasn't totally annoyed. I leaned against a crate, saying he'd look better spinning tracks than sorting them, my fingers brushing a vinyl sleeve, a slow move to catch his eye, knowing Kate's class ended soon, her last text about a client deal sitting unread on my phone. I wasn't going for anything big, just a nudge to get him looking, and I said his shop needed more life, my words sharp, testing, because I wanted to see if he'd push back, not just stand there like Kate's boring husband. He shifted a record, saying life wasn't his problem, and stepped closer to the crate, his hand landing on a sleeve near mine, not touching, but close enough to make me feel a rush I'd been aiming for, his voice low, asking what I was up to, like he'd caught my vibe and wasn't shutting it down. I tilted my head, saying I'd bet he still had some rockstar in him, my scarf slipping a bit, on purpose to keep his eyes, and he said rockstars like me were trouble, his tone half serious, with that cynical edge I liked, his fingers nudging the sleeve, brushing the air by my wrist, not grabbing, but enough to kick up the heat I'd wanted, his pause long, like he was deciding whether to back off or lean in, the storeroom's quiet hum of distant bar noise making it feel like we were alone. Kate's class a ticking clock, her presence heavy, like she's here if I laughed too loud. I wanted to push, see how much he'd give, but I knew I had to play it cool, so I grabbed a record, Springsteen, scratched but classic, flipping it over, saying I'd swipe his best stuff one day, my voice a quick jab, meaning it, and he gave a small grin, saying stuff like mine was hard to handle, his hand shifting a crate, a move that hit, because I'd wanted it, wanted him to react, even with Kate's shadow so close. Her car pulled into the lot, early, her voice calling my name from the shop's front, annoyed, like she'd sensed something off, and I stepped back, tossing the record onto the crate, saying I'd been checking stock, my voice fast, casual, while Roland grabbed a stack, saying he'd been sorting, his tone flat, like he hadn't just leaned into my move, his glance quick, like he knew I'd felt it. I shouted I'd head out, moving to the door, Kate waiting, her eyes narrowing at my scarf, asking why I was here so late, her gaze flicking to the storeroom's light, like she'd caught something wrong, detail she'd keep, and I said the bar ran late, shrugging, my steps quick, not looking at him, but feeling his eyes, knowing he'd stayed quiet, letting me carry it, the storeroom's dusty air heavy with what I'd started. She didn't push, muttering about her class, but her look stuck, and I headed home, the tequila's buzz fading, Roland's vibe sticking with me, planning my next move, because her eyes saw too much, and I wasn't letting this drop, not when I'd just kicked it off. For days after I got that rush from Roland in the storeroom, I was done with Kate's landscape design papers cluttering our Austin dining room, her voice droning on a client call about park fountains, when I saw a chance to turn up the heat, heading to Roland's music shop downtown to drop off a flyer for her charity gala, knowing he'd be there prepping for a weekend vinyl sale. I kept thinking about his storeroom move, how his hand had come close to mine, and I wanted to push him, see if he'd lean in or pull back, because I'd kicked this off and wasn't letting it drop. Kate's knack for catching me out, like when she grilled me about my scarf, had me watching my step, but messing with Roland, testing his cool, was too good to pass up. I threw on a cropped jacket, left a button undone, and headed out, Kate's text about a client meeting ignored on my phone, her voice still nagging like a warning I was ready to ignore. The shop's office was a small room behind the counter, stuffed with invoices, old posters, and the smell of coffee and leather, and Roland was at the desk, sorting orders, his flannel open, gray hair a mess, looking less like a shop owner and more like the guy who'd partied with bands I'd kill to meet, the kind of vibe I'd been itching to crack since I'd teased him that night. I dropped the flyer on his desk, saying his sale looked like it needed some life to draw a crowd, my voice sharp, with a grin to grab his attention, and he looked up, saying I'd walked into his mess without knocking, his tone dry, a bit snappy, but his eyes hit my jacket, a look that said he wasn't brushing me off. I leaned on the desk, saying Kate's gala needed his old rockstar charm to sell tickets, my fingers pushing the flyer closer, a slow move to make him notice, knowing Kate's call could end any minute, her last question about my late shop hours still fresh. The risk making me bold, not nervous, because I was calling the shots. I shifted, saying he'd probably forgotten how to work a room, my jacket slipping open a bit, on purpose to keep his eyes, and he put his pen down, saying rooms like me were hard to figure, his words slow, with a cynical bite, like he'd caught my move and wasn't sure how to play it, his hand sliding a stack of invoices, coming close to my fingers, not touching, but enough to kick up the heat I'd been after, his pause long, like he was stuck between backing off and stepping up, the office's buzz of shop chatter outside making it feel like we were in our own world, Kate's client call a shadow I could feel. I wanted to push, see how much he'd give, so I leaned closer, saying figuring me out would take more than his usual moves, my voice low, daring, because I wasn't here to play it safe, just to keep him hooked, guilt creeping in, quiet but real. When I spotted Kate's photo on the desk, her smile a stab at what I was messing with, he stood, saying moves weren't his thing anymore, his tone half serious, and stepped to a shelf, grabbing a vinyl, saying he'd need help if I was staying, his voice a challenge, like he'd called my bluff, and I moved beside him, saying I'd help if he admitted I'd got him rattled, my fingers brushing the shelf's edge, a move to keep him locked, the shop's noise fading, like we'd shut out everything, but Kate's presence loomed, her text a whisper in my head. I wanted to go harder, but a delivery guy's shout, yelling about a late shipment, cut through, not stopping us, but shifting it, and I stepped back, saying we'd spooked the guy, my laugh forced, because his words had hit, and I'd leaned too close, guilt sharper now, like a weight I couldn't shake. I grabbed my bag, saying his sale was fine, he didn't need me, my voice light to cover how his vibe had stuck, and he said I'd be back, he'd put money on it, his tone calm, like he'd seen my next step, Kate's text buzzing, asking where I was, like she'd caught a wrong note. I headed out, saying I'd walk, not wanting his shadow, my steps quick, the shop's noise fading, knowing I'd pushed too far, and her questions would hit hard if I didn't cool it, but that heat was burning, and I wasn't sure I could stop without losing the edge I'd started. 10 days after I turned up the heat in Roland's shop office, I was itching to get out of Kate's landscape design clutter filling our Austin living room, her voice droning on a client call about arboretum layouts, when I saw a shot to push things further. Heading to the music shop's recording studio to help Roland tune a guitar for a promo video, knowing he'd be there alone. I couldn't stop thinking about his office vibe, how he'd leaned into my jab, his hand brushing close, and I wanted to see if I could crack his cool, because I'd started this and wasn't backing off. Kate's sharp eye, like when she'd questioned my late shop hours, had me playing careful, but messing with Roland, seeing how far he'd go, was a high I couldn't shake. I threw on a loose tank top, low cut, and headed out, Kate's text about a client deal ignored on my phone, her voice a warning I was ready to tune out. The studio was a small, soundproof room in the shop's back, lined with foam panels and old gig posters, smelling of wood polish and amp dust, and Roland was there, tweaking a Stratocaster, his flannel sleeves rolled, gray hair catching the soft light, looking less like a shop owner and more like the guy who'd backed bands I'd kill to jam with. The kind of edge I'd been craving to test since I'd teased him in the storeroom. I shut the door, saying his video better have some bite to sell, my voice sharp, with a grin to grab him, and he looked up, saying I'd walked into his space unannounced again, his tone dry, a bit snarky, but his eyes hit my top, a look that said he wasn't dodging me. I leaned against the mixing board, saying Kate's gala needed his old rockstar swagger, my fingers brushing a cable, a slow move to make him notice. Knowing Kate's call could end any minute, her last nag about my schedule still fresh, the risk making me bold. Because I was running this show. I shifted, saying he'd probably forgotten how to hit the right notes, my tank top slipping a bit, on purpose to keep his eyes, and he set the guitar down, saying notes like mine were hard to play, his words slow, with a cynical edge, like he'd caught my move and wasn't sure how to counter, his hand adjusting a mic stand, coming close to my arm, not touching, but enough to light a fire I'd been chasing, his pause long, like he was stuck between pulling back and stepping in, the studio's quiet hum of amps making it feel like we were cut off from the world. Kate's client call a shadow I could feel. I wanted to push, so I leaned closer, saying playing me would take more than his usual tricks, my voice low, daring, because I wasn't here to play it safe, guilt creeping in, real now, when I spotted Kate's sketchbook on a shelf, her garden doodles a stab at what I was risking. He stood, saying tricks weren't his deal anymore, his tone rough, and then he stopped, voice dropping, saying he'd been trying to keep this straight, but I was making it impossible, that he felt something he shouldn't, something real, his words raw, like he'd let his guard slip, and I froze, my fingers tightening on the cable, because I'd pushed for this, wanted it, but hearing it hit hard, a rush I'd chased now burning, guilt cutting deeper, because I'd meant to steer, not feel, Kate's sketchbook a reminder of what I was breaking. I said he'd better mean it, my voice softer, almost shaky, because I felt it too, and it scared me, even as it pulled me, and I stepped closer, saying real was my kind of sound, my hand brushing the mic stand, a move to keep him locked, but honest enough to sting, the studio's silence wrapping us tight, like we'd stepped into a space no one could touch. Kate's voice broke through, calling my name from the shop floor, pissed, like she'd sensed something wrong, and I pulled back, saying I'd been helping, voice cracking, while Roland grabbed the guitar, saying he'd been tuning, his tone flat, like he hadn't just laid himself bare, his glance quick, like he knew we'd gone too far. I shouted I'd be out, heading for the door, Kate waiting, her eyes narrowing at my top, asking why I was here so late, her gaze flicking to the studio's light, like she'd caught a wrong vibe, detail she'd hold, and I said I'd been sorting promo stuff, shrugging, my steps fast, not looking at him, but feeling his eyes, knowing he'd stayed quiet, letting me carry it, the studio's muffled hum heavy with what I'd drawn out. She didn't push, muttering about her call, but her look stuck, and I headed home, the bar's buzz gone, Roland's confession burning, planning my next move, because her eyes saw too much, and I wasn't letting this slip, not when I'd just hit a deeper note. 2 weeks after Roland's confession in the studio lit a fire in me, I was over Kate's landscape design papers cluttering our Austin living room, her voice a hum on a client call about garden paths, when I jumped at a chance to push things further, tagging along with Roland to a warehouse across town to sort music shop promo gear for a vinyl festival. I kept replaying his raw words, how he'd admitted he felt something, and I wanted to test him, see if I could shake his cool, because I'd started this and wasn't slowing down. Kate's sharp instincts, like when she'd caught my shaky excuse after the studio, had me playing careful, but toying with Roland, seeing how close I could get, was a rush I couldn't ditch. I slipped on a loose t-shirt, sleeves rolled, and followed him out, Kate's text about a client deal ignored on my phone, her voice a warning I brushed off. The warehouse was a maze of crates and boxes, smelling of dust and cardboard, with forklifts humming in the distance, and Roland stood by a table, sorting flyers and posters, his flannel creased, hair a mess, looking less like a shop owner and more like the guy who'd backed bands I'd kill to see, the kind of vibe I'd been craving to crack since I teased him in the storeroom. I dropped my bag on a crate, saying his promo looked like it needed a boost to pull a crowd, my voice sharp, with a grin to grab him, and he looked up, saying I'd shown up to his chaos uninvited, his tone dry, a bit snarky, but his eyes hit my rolled sleeves, a look that said he wasn't shutting me out. I stepped to the table, saying Kate's gala had more pull than his posters, my fingers sliding a flyer closer, a slow move to catch his eye, knowing Kate was tied up, but her call could hit any second, the risk making me bold, because I was steering this. I leaned over the table, saying he'd probably lost his knack for drawing a crowd, my t-shirt shifting slightly, on purpose to keep his attention, and he set a stack of posters down, saying crowds like me were tough to handle, his words slow, with a cynical edge, like he'd caught my move and was weighing his play, his hand pushing a box, brushing the air near my arm, not touching, but close enough to kick up the heat I'd been after, his pause long, like he was stuck between stepping back and leaning in, the warehouse's clatter of crates making it feel like we were in our own pocket, Kate's call a shadow I could sense. I wanted to push, so I slid another flyer, saying handling me would take more than his old moves, my voice low, daring, because I wasn't here to play safe, guilt-hitting, real now. When I saw Kate's business card tucked in a crate, her name a jab at what I was messing with. He stood, saying old moves weren't his thing, his tone rough, and stepped to a crate, lifting a banner, saying he'd need help if I was sticking around, his voice a challenge, like he'd matched my jab, and I moved beside him, saying I'd help if he admitted I'd rattled him, my fingers brushing the banner's edge, a move to keep him locked, the warehouse's noise fading, like we'd blocked out the world. But Kate's presence loomed, her text a whisper in my head. I wanted to go further, but a worker's shout, cursing a dropped crate, cut through, not stopping us, but shifting the mood, and I stepped back, saying we'd spooked the guy, my laugh forced, because his words had landed, and I'd leaned too close, guilt sharper, like a weight I couldn't dodge. I grabbed my bag, saying his promo was set, he didn't need me, my voice light to hide how his vibe had stuck, and he said I'd be back, he'd bet on it. His tone calm, like he'd seen my next step, Kate's text buzzing, asking where I was, like she'd caught a wrong note. I headed out, saying I'd walk, not wanting his shadow, my steps quick, the warehouse's dust lingering, knowing I'd pushed too far, and her questions would hit hard if I didn't ease up, but that heat was burning, and I wasn't sure I could stop without losing the edge I'd built. 1 week after I shook Roland up in that dusty Austin warehouse, I pulled him to a dive bar on 6th Street to help with a music shop promo. Tired of Kate's garden design emails piling up at home, her voice droning about plaza layouts. His studio confession, those raw words about feeling something real, kept replaying, and I wanted to push him to the limit, my tequila buzz from a pre-game shot making me fearless. Kate's sharp eye, like when she'd caught my weak excuse after the studio, had me watching my steps, but toying with Roland, testing how far he'd go, was a rush I couldn't quit. I threw on a loose tank top, sleeves rolled, and met him there, Kate's text about a client deal ignored on my phone, her voice a warning I didn't care about. The bar was loud, neon signs buzzing, air thick with beer and sweat, and Roland stood by a small stage, tuning a Gibson, his flannel open, gray hair messy, looking less like a shop owner and more like the rockstar I'd been dying to crack since I teased him in the storeroom. I stepped up, saying his promo needed my energy to pull a crowd, my voice sharp, with a grin to hook him, and he shot back that I'd crashed his plan, his tone snarky, eyes catching my top, a look that said he wasn't backing off. I grabbed a guitar from a stand, strumming a quick chord, saying he'd tank without me, my tank top shifting slightly, a move to grab his attention, keeping it subtle to stay safe. He strummed a riff, saying I'd pushed too far, his hand brushing the fretboard near mine, not touching, but close enough to light a fire I'd been chasing, his eyes holding mine, like he was daring me to keep going. I leaned closer, keeping my voice low, saying I'd steal his spotlight if he didn't step up, my fingers sliding along the guitar neck, a bold nudge to keep him locked, knowing Kate could call any second, her last question about my late nights still fresh, the risk making me push harder, because I was in control. He said stealing from him would take more than my tricks, his tone rough, with that cynical edge I liked, and I grinned, saying tricks were my specialty, guilt-hitting as I saw Kate's name on a bar flyer, her gala a stab at what I was risking. The bar's noise, his clinking glasses, loud chatter, made it feel like we were alone, but Kate's shadow loomed, her text a whisper in my head. I wanted to go further, but a drunk patron's shout, cursing a spilled drink, cut through, not stopping us, but shifting the vibe, and I stepped back, saying we'd spooked the guy, my laugh forced, because his look had landed, and I'd leaned too close, guilt sharper, like a weight I couldn't shake. I set the guitar down, saying his promo was good enough, he didn't need me, my voice light to hide how his vibe had stuck, and he said I'd be back, he'd put money on it, his tone calm, like he knew my next move. Kate's call hit, pissed, asking where I was, her voice loud over the bar noise. I said I'd been helping Roland, voice quick, guilt surging as I headed out, her eyes catching my flushed face when I got home, details she'd hold, the bar's neon glow heavy with what I'd stirred up. 1 week after our bar jam set my nerves ablaze, I slipped into the music shop's office in Austin on a stormy Monday night, Kate's landscape design binders cluttering our home, her absence at a client meeting a slim chance to push my game with Roland to its limit. His studio confession, those raw words about feeling something, and our barroom riff still burned, and I wanted to end this, not with a reckless move, but with a showdown that'd leave him exposed, his secrets out. Kate's sharp instincts, Like when she caught my flushed face after the bar, had me on edge, but outplaying Roland, turning his own vibe against him, was a rush I couldn't quit. I wore a loose t-shirt, sleeves rolled, and stepped in, finding him at the desk, sorting invoices, his flannel open, gray hair messy, less shop owner, more the rock star I'd been unraveling since that storeroom night, his presence hitting me hard, like a note I couldn't shake. I leaned against the desk, saying his invoices looked as dull as his old gigs, my voice sharp, with a smirk to hook him, and he looked up, saying I'd crashed his night again, his tone dry, snarky, but his eyes locked on mine, like he'd been waiting for this. I slid a flyer closer, saying Kate's gala needed his charm, my t-shirt shifting slightly, a subtle move to keep his focus, knowing Kate could show up any second, her last text about a vendor deal ignored, the risk making me bold, because I was in control. He set his pen down, saying charm like mine was too much for his stage, his words slow, with a cynical bite, his hand pushing a stack of papers, brushing the air near my fingers, not touching, but close enough to light a fire I'd chased, his paws heavy, like he was caught in a trap we'd both set, the office's quiet hum of rain outside making it feel like we were alone, Kate's binders at home a reminder of what I was risking. I stood, saying too much was my style, my voice a low challenge, and stepped closer, saying he'd been ducking me since the bar, my fingers trailing the desk's edge, a move to keep him pinned, guilt sharp now, because I'd gone too far, felt too much, Kate's photo on the wall, a family shot from last summer, cutting through my nerve like a knife. He rose, saying he wasn't ducking, but I'd made it impossible to stay steady, his voice rough, like he'd dropped his guard, and I froze, my hand on a stack of invoices, because I'd wanted this, pushed for it, but the weight of it, her trust, our family, hit hard, guilt louder than the storm. I pulled out the emails, printouts of his plans with Sara, his betrayal of Kate, of me, and slapped them on the desk, saying, "Thought I wouldn't find out?" His face went pale, but his eyes didn't flinch, and I stepped closer, voice low, "You picked the wrong one to cross." Kate's car roared into the lot, early, her voice slicing through, calling my name, furious, like she'd sensed a break in the house, and I stepped back, saying I'd been sorting, voice shaky, while Roland shoved the emails into a drawer, saying he'd been working, his tone flat, his glance quick, like he knew we'd crossed too far. Kate stormed in, eyes blazing, screaming what I'd done, her voice shredding, saying she'd seen my late nights, his excuses, my dodges, accusing Roland of betraying her again, her words cutting at secrets I hadn't grasped, throwing a binder at the wall, yelling I'd broken her trust, broken us, and I cracked, confessing, I pushed him, but he's been with Sara. Kate's scream choked, Roland's silence a roar, the office's rain-soaked light spilling out, leaving me to face the wreckage I'd lit, my control shattered, guilt heavy as the truth I'd forced into the open.